You'll spend roughly 90,000 hours of your life working a job, waking to an alarm, commuting somewhere you didn't choose, doing tasks assigned by someone else. In exchange for money you'll spend on things you need to survive. It feels permanent. It feels like the natural order of things. But jobs, in the way you understand them, are one of the newest inventions in human history. And for nearly all of our existence, a human day looked almost nothing like yours. So let's start at the beginning. Not with an office, but with a person waking up in the dark, with no clock, no calendar, and no idea what Monday even means. For roughly 300,000 years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers. No employers, no wages, no fixed hours. And here's what should genuinely surprise you. Anthropological studies of surviving hunter-gatherer societies, like the Hadza of Tanzania and the Kung of southern Africa, suggest that ancient humans likely spent somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a week actually acquiring food. Not 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. 15 to 20 hours, total, for the entire week. Think about that. By that measure, the earliest humans may have had more leisure time than you do right now. But here's what's strange. That free time wasn't spent doing nothing. It was spent doing almost everything else that made survival possible. A typical day likely began with waking naturally, with sunlight, not sound. There was no need for an alarm when your entire schedule was dictated by light, temperature, and hunger. Anthropologists studying these communities describe mornings often spent in unhurried conversation, checking in with the group, before any real activity started. This wasn't laziness. This was maintenance of relationships, of trust, of the social bonds that an entire band depended on to survive. Then came the actual work of living. But even here, the modern idea of a strict division of labor barely applies. In many hunter-gatherer societies, gathering, not hunting, provided the overwhelming majority of daily calories. Women, and often children, gathering fruit, nuts, roots, and insects, contributed a steady, reliable supply of food, while hunting, dramatic and memorable as it is in our imagination, was frequently unsuccessful. Some studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups show large game hunts failing more often than they succeed, sometimes the majority of the time. Here's the terrifying part hiding underneath that statistic. If hunting failed as often as it seems to have, that means for most of human history, the people quietly gathering plants and insects, work rarely glorified in any story we tell about our ancestors, were the ones actually keeping the group alive. And this is where everything changes, because it forces a question. If gathering was more reliable than hunting, why do we still picture our ancestors as heroic hunters, spears raised, chasing mammoths across the plain? Psychologists studying cultural memory suggest something uncomfortable. Humans tend to remember and mythologize the dramatic, high-risk, high-reward moments, and quietly erase the steady, unglamorous labor that actually sustained daily life. It's the same reason a single viral success story gets remembered, while thousands of ordinary, functional days disappear from memory entirely. Your ancestors weren't lying to you. Their descendants were just better at remembering the exciting parts. But food was only part of the day. The rest of it was filled with something almost invisible to us now. Unstructured, purposeful activity, with no boss assigning it and no clock demanding it. Tool-making took up real time. A single stone tool, when knapped by an experienced hand, could take anywhere from a few minutes to hours, depending on complexity, and needed to be repeated constantly, since tools wore down or broke often. Firewood had to be gathered, sometimes over long distances, since a fire that went cold overnight could mean a genuinely dangerous, freezing night. Shelters needed regular maintenance, especially in harsher climates, patched, rebuilt, or entirely relocated depending on the season. And children weren't sent away for structured schooling. They learned by watching and by doing. A child in a hunter-gatherer band might spend part of their day mimicking adults, practicing tool use on soft wood before ever touching stone, or trailing behind gatherers, learning which plants meant nourishment and which meant poison, through direct observation rather than any classroom. Here's what's strange about that. Some researchers argue this kind of unstructured, self-directed learning may have produced remarkably competent, capable individuals by early adulthood, not despite the absence of formal schooling, but because of it. Every skill was immediately relevant. Every lesson had visible, immediate stakes. As the sun moved through the day, and especially as it began to set, most hunter-gatherer societies, studied by anthropologists, show a consistent pattern, a shift toward the group gathering around fire. And this is where something happens that modern life has almost entirely lost. Storytelling. Research on the Juhoansi people of the Kalahari found that daytime conversation was overwhelmingly practical, logistics, complaints, coordination. But nighttime conversation around the fire shifted dramatically towards stories, myths, histories, and moral tales. Researchers studying this pattern suggest firelight itself may have functioned as a kind of ancient social technology, a nightly ritual that reinforced shared values, passed down critical survival knowledge, and strengthened the emotional bonds holding the entire group together. Think about what that means. Before writing existed, before any record could be stored outside a human brain, storytelling around a fire was the primary method by which entire cultures preserved themselves, night after night, for hundreds of generations. So here's the full picture. A typical ancient day wasn't divided into work and personal time the way yours is. It was a single, continuous rhythm of gathering food, making tools, maintaining shelter, teaching children through direct experience, and ending, almost universally, around a shared fire, with stories that meant something far beyond entertainment. There was no job to clock into. There was no weekend to look forward to, because there was no distinction between the days that demanded labor and the days that didn't. There was only the ongoing, unbroken task of staying alive together. And somehow, inside that task, ancient humans still found room for rest, for connection, for stories told purely because they mattered. You go to a job today that didn't exist for most of human history, but somewhere underneath your instinct to gather around a screen at the end of a long day, to tell someone what happened, to want to be heard by the people closest to you, that fire is still burning. We just forgot we were the ones who lit it. If a hunter-gatherer's ordinary day held more balance than yours does now, imagine what else we lost chasing progress. That's what Yedd is for. Like this video and subscribe.